A millionaire walks into a room and sees a black woman. What happens next will shock you to your core. Because in the next 60 seconds, everything this wealthy woman thinks she knows about power, success, and superiority is about to crumble before her eyes. The pain of prejudice meets the brutal reality of assumptions gone wrong. What you're about to witness isn't just a story. It's a mirror reflecting the darkest corners of privilege and the devastating consequences when arrogance meets its match. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Victoria Sterling adjusted her Hermes blazer and swept into the marble lobby of First National Bank with the confidence of someone who owned half the city. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, like a countdown to destruction, though she didn't know it yet. "Excuse me," she snapped at the elegant black woman sitting in the waiting area, scrolling through her phone. "I need you to hang up my coat and get me a coffee. Milk, 2 sugars. I'm here for the most important meeting of my career." The woman looked up slowly, her dark eyes unreadable. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. But Victoria saw only what she expected to see. "I'm sorry, I think there's been a..." the woman began. "No excuses," Victoria cut her off. "I don't have time for lazy assistants today. This merger is going to make me richer than I ever dreamed, and I need everything perfect. Coffee, now." The woman stood gracefully, her movements fluid and controlled. There was something unsettling about her composure. Something that should have warned Victoria to look closer, think harder, question her assumptions. "Of course," the woman said quietly. "I'll take care of that for you." As Victoria watched her walk toward what she assumed was a break room, she felt a surge of satisfaction. Some people understood their place in the world. Others needed to be reminded. She pulled out her phone and dialed her assistant. "Meg, I'm at the bank. Yes, I know I'm early, but I want to make sure everything goes smoothly. The CEO should be here soon, and then we'll finally close this deal." What Victoria didn't notice was the woman returning with her coffee, standing just close enough to overhear every word. "Here's your coffee," the woman said, setting the cup down on the glass table. Victoria took a sip and immediately spat it out. "Are you trying to poison me? I said milk and 2 sugars, not whatever this swill is. Are you even listening? Or are you too stupid to follow simple instructions?" The woman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You said milk and 2 sugars. That's exactly what I gave you. Don't you dare talk back to me," Victoria hissed. "Rule number 1 of being a good assistant: never argue with your superior. I graduated from Brown, got my MBA from UCLA, and built a Fortune 500 company from nothing. Meanwhile, you're here serving coffee like a trained monkey." The woman absorbed the insult with a stillness that was almost frightening. "You really shouldn't judge people so quickly," she said softly. "It has a way of coming back to bite you." Victoria laughed, a sharp sound that echoed off the marble walls. "In 20 minutes, I'm going to sign a deal worth tens of millions. I don't need to care what someone like you thinks about anything." She dialed her phone again, making sure her voice carried across the lobby. "Richard? Still waiting for the CEO and bank manager?" "Yes, I've been stuck dealing with this incompetent receptionist all morning. She's done nothing but waste my time with her attitude and laziness." The woman had moved to the reception desk, and Victoria noticed her typing something on a computer, probably updating her timesheet or whatever menial tasks these people did. "Can you at least try to look professional?" Victoria called out. "When the real executives arrive, I don't want them thinking this bank employs complete amateurs." The woman's fingers paused on the keyboard. When she looked up, there was something in her eyes that made Victoria's stomach flutter with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. Fear? No, that was ridiculous. What did she have to fear from a glorified secretary? The elevator chimed, and Victoria straightened, smoothing her skirt. This was it. Her moment of triumph. The doors opened, and a distinguished man in his 50s stepped out, followed by another in a banker's suit. "Mrs. Sterling," the first man called out with a warm smile. "So sorry to keep you waiting. I'm Tom Bradley, the bank manager. This is quite an exciting day for all of us." Victoria stood and shook his hand firmly. "The pleasure is all mine, Tom. I'm thrilled to finally make this merger official. Where is Mrs. Johnson?" I was hoping to meet with her before we began. Tom looked around the lobby, confused. Mrs. Johnson? She should be here already. Her assistant said she arrived before you did. Victoria waved dismissively toward the reception area. Well, your assistant is clearly mistaken. That woman over there has been nothing but trouble since I arrived. Rude, argumentative, completely unprofessional. If I were you, I'd seriously consider replacing her. Tom followed her gaze, and his face went completely white. The other banker beside him made a strangled sound, like he was choking on air. Mrs. Sterling, Tom said slowly. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? Victoria asked, but something cold was creeping up her spine. The woman, the assistant, the coffee fetcher, the nobody, was walking toward them now. Her stride was different somehow, more purposeful, more commanding. When she reached their small circle, Tom practically bowed. Mrs. Johnson, he said with deep respect. I'm so sorry for any confusion. Please allow me to introduce Victoria Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Enterprises. The world tilted sideways. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face as the woman Mrs. Johnson extended a perfectly manicured hand. Actually, Carrie Johnson said with a smile that could freeze hellfire, we've already met. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This couldn't be happening. This was impossible. You're Carrie Johnson? She stammered. CEO and founder of Johnson Industries. Yes, Carrie replied smoothly. The same company that's about to acquire yours and what you called the most important meeting of your career. Tom Bradley shifted uncomfortably. Is there some kind of problem with the deal? Because I have to say, everyone at the bank is extremely excited about this merger. The long-term growth potential is extraordinary. Victoria's mind raced. She had to salvage this. She had to find a way to make this right. Look, Carrie, Mrs. Johnson, we got off to a rocky start, but that's behind us now. We need each other, right? This deal is good for both our companies. What do you say we start fresh? Carrie tilted her head, studying Victoria like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. You're absolutely right. This is a very good deal for both our companies. In fact, it just became an even better deal, thanks to a few last-minute alterations I made while you were busy. What kind of alterations? Victoria asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Well, Carrie said, pulling out her phone, I just got off a very interesting call with your board of directors. I told them I was prepared to walk away from this deal unless certain conditions were met. Victoria's knees went weak. What conditions? Your removal as CEO, effective immediately. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. You can't fire me. This is my company. Carrie's smile was razor sharp. You're right. I can't fire you. She paused, letting the hope bloom in Victoria's eyes before crushing it completely. But your board can, and they did. Tom Bradley cleared his throat, if I may. Mrs. Sterling, the bank's risk assessment team has always considered your continued tenure as CEO to be our primary concern regarding this merger. What he's trying to say politely, Carrie added, is that they're surprised you weren't fired for cause months ago. Victoria felt the room spinning around her. This wasn't possible. This wasn't happening. Let me tell you who I really am, Carrie said, her voice cutting through Victoria's panic like a blade. Since you were so interested in credentials earlier, Victoria could only stand there, trembling, as her world collapsed around her. I didn't just go to college. I graduated summa cum laude from Yale. Then I earned my MBA from Harvard, while simultaneously launching my first company with exactly $97 to my name. That was 15 years ago, by the way. 5 years before you started your empire. Every word was a dagger. Victoria tried to speak, to defend herself, but no sound came out. In those 15 years, my company has consistently outperformed yours in every meaningful metric. Better sales, higher market cap, triple the growth rate. I wonder why that is. Could it be that I actually know how to run a company? Tom Bradley and the other banker exchanged glances. They were witnessing an execution, and they knew it. Oh, and Victoria? Carrie continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. Everyone in this room knows you didn't start your company from scratch like you love to claim. You started it with a $3 million inheritance from your grandfather. Then you proceeded to mismanage it so badly that you're here today, begging someone who looks like me to save you from bankruptcy. Victoria finally found her voice. This is outrageous. You can't do this to me. My company needs me. Actually, the unnamed banker spoke up for the first time. Our analysis shows that your continued leadership is the only significant risk factor in this merger. Mrs. Johnson's track record speaks for itself. Carrie nodded graciously. Thank you, David. And you're absolutely right. This merger will be tremendously successful. Just not with Victoria at the helm. Victoria looked around desperately, searching for an ally, for anyone who might help her salvage something from this disaster. But the faces around her ranged from professional indifference to barely concealed satisfaction. How had this happened? How had she gone from triumph to catastrophe in the span of 20 minutes? Security. Victoria screamed, her composure finally shattering completely. I'm being robbed. This woman is stealing my company. Tom Bradley sighed and pressed a button on his phone. Matt, could you please come to the lobby? This is insane, Victoria continued, her voice rising to a near shriek. You can't just take someone's life work. I built that company. I sacrificed everything for it. Carrie watched the meltdown with detached interest. You sacrificed everything? Really? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you inherited everything and then threw it away through sheer incompetence. I worked 80-hour weeks. I gave up my personal life. You gave up nothing, Carrie interrupted. You played CEO while actual professionals cleaned up your mistakes. Your own board told me they've been looking for an excuse to remove you for years. A security guard appeared. A large, professional-looking man who clearly knew exactly what was happening. Mrs. Johnson, he said with a respectful nod. Is there a problem? No problem at all, Matt. Mrs. Sterling was just leaving. Victoria backed away from the security guard, her eyes wild. You can't do this. This is my deal. My merger. Actually, Tom Bradley said gently, this merger was Mrs. Johnson's idea from the beginning. She approached us 6 months ago with a proposal to acquire your company's assets and intellectual property. She's been very patient, but I think everyone agrees it's time to move forward. The pieces clicked into place in Victoria's mind. This hadn't been her triumph. It had been her execution, planned months in advance. She had walked into a trap so perfectly laid that she had actually thanked people for setting it. The coffee, she whispered, staring at Carrie. You knew exactly who I was from the moment I walked in. Carrie's smile was arctic. You'd have known who you were for years, Victoria. I've been watching you destroy a perfectly good company through arrogance and incompetence. I just needed to see it for myself. You set me up. I gave you every opportunity to be decent, to show respect, to recognize that appearances can be deceiving. You failed every single test. Matt, the security guard, stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. No, Victoria clutched at Tom Bradley's sleeve. You don't understand. Without me, this deal will fall apart. The company will collapse. Tom gently extracted his arm. Mrs. Sterling, I think you're the one who doesn't understand. This merger is happening precisely because you're being removed from the equation. Mrs. Johnson has already provided us with a comprehensive restructuring plan that will save jobs and increase profitability. Victoria turned to Carrie one last time, desperation replacing rage. Please, I know I made mistakes, but this company is my life. It's all I have. For just a moment, Carrie's expression softened. You had everything, Victoria. A successful business, talented employees, the respect of your peers. You threw it all away because you couldn't see past your own prejudices. I can change, Victoria whispered. Give me another chance. Carrie shook her head slowly. You had your chance. You had a dozen chances. Every time you looked at me and saw assistant instead of CEO. Every time you assumed incompetence based on skin color. Every time you chose cruelty over kindness. Matt placed a firm but gentle hand on Victoria's shoulder. Ma'am, we really need to go now. As Victoria was escorted toward the elevator, she heard Carrie's voice behind her. Tom, shall we proceed with the signing? I have a company to restructure. The elevator doors closed on Victoria's old life. And she was alone with the devastating realization that she had authored her own destruction. Every insult, every assumption, every moment of casual cruelty had been building toward this moment. She had walked into that lobby as a millionaire CEO and was leaving as nothing at all. 6 months later, Carrie Johnson stood in the corner office that had once belonged to Victoria Sterling, reviewing the quarterly reports that showed a company transformed. Employee satisfaction was up 40%. Productivity had increased by 30%. For the first time in years, Sterling Industries, now a division of Johnson Industries, was actually making money. Her assistant knocked and entered. "Mrs. Johnson, the board meeting is ready to begin." "Thank you, Sarah." Carrie gathered her papers and headed toward the conference room, where a dozen faces looked up at her with respect and anticipation. "Good morning, everyone," she said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "I'm pleased to report that our integration is ahead of schedule and under budget." A murmur of approval ran around the table. "More importantly," Carrie continued, "we've retained 92% of our workforce and increased salaries across the board. This acquisition wasn't just about profit, it was about proving that good leadership can transform even the most troubled organization." An older man at the far end of the table raised his hand. "Mrs. Johnson, what about Victoria Sterling? Have you heard what happened to her?" Carrie paused, choosing her words carefully. "Ms. Sterling has started a consulting firm. I'm told she's doing well, though her client base is limited." She didn't mention that Victoria's new business consisted entirely of online courses teaching leadership fundamentals to an audience of 12 people, or that her LinkedIn posts about overcoming setbacks had become an industry joke. Some lessons, Carrie reflected, were more expensive than others. "Any other questions?" When none came, she smiled. "Then let's get to work. We have a company to run." As the meeting dissolved into productive discussion, Carrie looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere out there, people were making assumptions about others, based on appearance, background, or circumstance. Some would learn from their mistakes. Others would pay the price Victoria had paid. The difference, Carrie had learned long ago, was simple. Respect cost nothing to give, but everything to lose. And in the end, character wasn't about what you achieved, it was about how you treated people when you thought nobody important was watching. The irony was that someone important was always watching. They just might not look like what you expected. What did you think of this story? Have you ever witnessed someone making assumptions about others that came back to haunt them? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true-to-life stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat.